Hello, my name is Fredrik Heintz, and I'm Associate Professor of Computer Science at Linköping University in Sweden, where I do research on artificial intelligence. Today, I want to talk about trustworthy AI and the public sector. I strongly believe that the public sector is very important, especially in a country like Sweden, and that it stands before a number of major challenges moving along, where I think that AI will be one part of the solution to many of these challenges. However, in order for that to be accepted, both by the people working in the public sector and by us as citizens, it's absolutely essential that we can trust the quality and the accuracy and so on of this AI, partly AI-based systems. So what I want to discuss about here today is a bit about the background and also a little bit about what is trustworthy AI and how to apply this in order to achieve trustworthy AI for the public sector. So if we start with the challenges, so I think we're all very much aware that Sweden stands before a great demographic challenge where the youngest and the oldest part of the population is growing, while those in between who is providing most of the resources for the young and the old is shrinking. And of course, this means that the number of people who are both going to do the work in the public sector, but also pay for the work in the public sector is shrinking in relation to the overall population. At the same time, we also see that we as citizens put higher and higher expectations and demands on the quality and availability and ease of use and speed and so on these public services. And of course, we also have the kind of increasing requirements more from the legal and the so on perspective. So taken together, it's becoming more demanding and more challenging to provide the public service that we as citizens expect, demand, and really benefit from. At the same time, if we look from within the public sector, of course, the economical and human resources are getting more constrained because these do not grow in the same pace as the expectations, requirements, and demands, which means that we have fewer people, fewer resources, but we want to achieve more. Of course, one potential solution to this would be to increase the resources. However, of course, we can potentially increase the economical resources to the public sector, but I do think there is a limit on the human resources. And actually, there was a report a number of years back from SKR where they basically said that, if the public sector continues to kind of grow when it comes to employees as today, in just a few years, we would have to employ 95% of everyone born in a certain year, and which of course does not work because we have all the other sectors as well to cover. So I think it's absolutely essential that with the same or slightly larger resources, we can achieve all these challenges. And actually, according to a report by the Swedish Ministry of Finance, there is also a financing gap of 90 billion Swedish kroners in just a few years. And therefore, the government has given the Swedish Digitalization Authority, DIG, the task of studying how can we use digitalization to improve the Swedish welfare. And here there is also a quote by the person, Patrik Ekemo, who is responsible for this at DIG. And basically it says that we really need to find ways to use technology in order to secure the welfare in the long run and improve the kind of conditions for the people working in the public sector. So here, of course, when we have these challenges, I think AI provides an opportunity to address some of these challenges. And actually continuing on this, the task that DIG has been given, they published a report in the end of 2019 where they basically did a study of how existing AI technology can be used in the kind of existing public sector activities and found that there's basically an opportunity to create economical space of 140 billion Swedish kroners every year by doing this, which means that those money could be used and the people that they employ could be used for other things to improve the quality and availability of the public sector. So basically what we can do is that we can use our resources more efficiently. So the same number of staff or employees can get more done, which of course also means that there will be less work for each, or less stress for each employee. And because today, I think we all realize and feel that the expectations, we are supposed to get more done in the same amount of time compared to before, which of course is not healthy in the long run. So therefore, we really need to reduce the pressure on people so that they can have a more long-term sustainable working conditions. And here I think automation and AI will be one part of that. I also think that when you automate these, for example, decision-making systems, it means that you as a government official are not the person that the citizens should convince. You're not the one they should overcome in order to make the desired decision, but rather the decisions are done by these automated systems, and you as the public sector official is rather a support to help these people in order to get the best possible outcome. And I really think this is switching the roles, which I think is very beneficial to everyone. And finally, it's also about faster, more accurate, more consistent, and I would also argue fairer decisions. So, of course, this is something where there's a lot of debate these days about this automated decision making. In my opinion, by automating the decisions, you get a very well-defined decision making system, which you can test extensively. And if you find out that there is something wrong with the system, that doesn't give the desired or expected result, then you can tweak it and adapt it and fix it so that you get the desired outcome. And when you have done that, you know you will get the desired outcome. So it's not that, oh, now we have a new rule or regulation, now we need to train everyone that is making these decisions, but you need to make one change to the system, and then it's following the new rules and regulations. So of course, it's a challenge to get it up to a sufficient level of quality, but I think it's a worthwhile investment, because after you do that, you can scale it up. So of course, there will be much less waiting times. As I said, it will be more consistent because it will be the same outcome depending on this, with the same input, and so on. But of course, there are challenges and there are things that you need to be aware of in order to make this work. So if I summarize this report by DIG, they pinpointed a number of areas of improvement where we need to do more in order to make use and kind of realize this potential. And one thing is, for example, clear organization and leadership. And I strongly agree with this, that I think it's very much a leadership question, that if the leaders of the organization support and kind of provide foundations for doing this, the opportunities, I think many employees will have the knowledge and know how to actually achieve it. So I really think this, but you also need to organize in a way which supports and make these approaches possible. We also have a lot of legal, uncertainty or gray zones that needs to be addressed. So we need to have a appropriate legal development so that the legal systems and the kind of technical capabilities and the things we want to achieve are well aligned. And of course, there's a major challenge when it comes to competence and also to the digital infrastructure. So DIG talks a lot about data as a strategic resource, that need to build common infrastructure so we don't get that every municipality and every region builds their own systems, but rather that we get a common interoperable system which allows us then to share information and to share the cost of developing these systems among many different actors. So we need this ecosystem for collaboration and innovation. So they also make a number of suggestions, such as establishing a national competence center with AI expertise. So I mean, one of the challenges was the availability of competence. And one way of doing this is that there is one, or at least one place where they have this knowledge that municipalities and government departments so on can come and ask and get advice and help to deal with these issues. And there's also a need for a platform for collaboration, joint development, and innovation. So again, it's about supporting collaboration, sharing the development costs, sharing the solutions so that they benefit as many people as possible. And I mean, you can continue this with having more like guidelines, AI guides, and create the legal space for pilot studies. So also on the EU level, there is discussion about these sandboxes where you can, under very well-defined conditions, try out different things so that you know what works and what does not work, and that you can define and set up the appropriate legal structure and appropriate technical solutions and organizational support competences and so on and so forth. And then there is also a major need to improve and develop professional and role-specific education in AI. So that, and I mean, this is something I will touch upon later as well, that I really think what we're missing is the kind of dual competences, those that understand the kind of public sector legal framework, for example, and understand the technology so they can see both sides. Or if you're a HR person working at a large municipality, for example, and how can you use these tools in your work, or the nurses or the teachers and so on. So I mean, all these very important professions, we need to combine them so that they can leverage the power of these tools so they can do their work better than they're doing it today. So I want to be extremely clear about, it's not about replacing people. It's really about empowering and augmenting and supporting people in doing their jobs so that they can do their jobs even better than they do it today. And finally, DIG also says that they want to develop a national data strategy. So it's really about this taking care of and managing the data that the public sector is collecting in an appropriate way. So I really think this is a good report to see, I mean, what are the opportunities and also what are the things we need to do in order to achieve them. If I take a bit more kind of a technical perspective, I mean, or well, semi-technical at least. So what can AI do today? Well, I would say that today the most kind of impressive and useful, I would also say, AI applications is really around the areas of perception. So, for example, understanding things through images or videos. So what we call computer vision. So basically, seeing things. I mean, recognizing objects, classifying. For example, there might be converting text, written text to digital text, this kind of optical character recognition, which is a relatively simple thing. But I mean, identifying objects in images is a much more challenging thing, and to kind of understand what's going on. The second area is voice recognition. So it's really about audio. So I guess you can call it computer hearing. And very much about opening up the opportunity and possibility to use our voice to control and to interface with machines. And of course, some kind of obvious important applications here is automatic translation. So I mean that you might have people speaking other languages, that they can be recognized what they're saying, and then we can use natural language processing techniques to automatically translate it into a language that you understand, and vice versa. So I mean, today we see a wide variety of this voice recognition system. Of course, everyone have them on their mobile phones, but they're becoming more common in many different areas. And I already mentioned this, but then the kind of natural next level is this natural language processing. And especially if you take a public sector perspective, a lot of the material that you're working with is text and other kind of written material. And here, natural language processing techniques provide ways of organizing, structuring, summarizing, analyzing, and so on, all this textual information. And I mean, one concrete example I already mentioned was this machine translation, so that today we can get relatively good translations between a wide variety of different pairs of languages, which is really, really impressive. And of course, I mean, large-scale data analysis, predictions. I mean, if you're running a municipality, for example, or a city or something like that, you need to be able to predict, I mean, what are the expected number of kids that need school placement the next year? What's the expected number of elder home positions and so on. And there's a lot of things we need to predict, and the better we are at predicting, the better we can adapt the decisions that we make. We can really make it anticipatory decision making, which I think would be really useful. And of course, taking into consideration the risks and the kind of potential deviation from these expected predictions. So there's a lot of things that AI can provide today. But and I mean, one concrete example that I mean is used quite a lot since now almost 4 years old is this where they automated the decision making for the welfare support in Trelleborg. And I really think this is an interesting case from many different perspectives. Of course, and I mean, if we take the starting point, so the starting point was basically that it took too long for the civil servants to make a decision. And that basically the existing staff of civil servants couldn't keep up with the demand, the number of applications coming in. So it's really becoming a work environment issue. And since they've been working with digitization for a long time, the natural next step was to automate the process of just kind of checking if an application satisfies the conditions to get this benefit support. And then they could cut down from weeks to, well, I guess seconds if they wanted to, but if I remember correctly, they basically got the decision next day. And I really think this is an example where it's demand driven, but also where the organization is mature and have been working with digitalization for a long time. So it's not like going from 0 to 100 in one fell swoop, but rather it's a gradual transition, which makes it much more easy for the staff to accept it. And also that, as far as I know, the staff was involved in the process, which I do think is very important. So, and here, at least the short-term benefit was very positive. They could manage the number of applications much better. However, of course, there were some challenges. I mean, this system has been challenged in court about regarding transparency and so on. And I really think here are some interesting questions. I mean, if I remember correctly, they basically wanted to see the source code of this tool. And I mean, that was the level of transparency expected. While, of course, we don't expect to see how a person works. I mean, so you can either take the perspective that it's kind of unfair treatment of this digital system because we have much higher demands on them, which I think is a good thing. But you can also take it as a positive thing, namely that, well, just since we have them fully implemented, I mean, we can in detail know exactly how all these decisions were made and so on. So I really think this opens up an opportunity to have an external perspective on our decision making, which will allow us to improve the quality of our decision making. But I mean, as I said, it's not without challenges. And from what I also understand is that the kind of long-term consequences for the staff was that since now the role of this civil servant changed, there were different kind of skills and tasks that needed to be done. So as far as I know, the number of people employed has not changed, but what they do at work has changed, which also changes the kind of demands on the particular people working there. So I really think this is an interesting case study in many, many respects. So then what are some challenges? I mean, this is also very old, but I mean, the whole point here is that if one uses this particular technique called machine learning, where you take a large number of samples and kind of train a system to make decisions, then you might run into these issues where a very small change in the input can make a major change in the output. And here we have an example of an image which is correctly classified as a panda. You add something which looks like noise to us and just slightly changes the image, but then it makes the computer think that this is instead a monkey instead of a panda, which of course is completely wrong. And here there are challenges, and there is a lot of research going on. How do you verify and validate these kind of techniques, which I think is really, really interesting. Another challenge when we have these data-driven systems, and I mean, in general, I would argue it doesn't really matter if it's humans or machines that make the decision. The challenge is related to the fact that we have data-driven solutions, and that is that the data that we base our decisions on will contain bias. So, I mean, if it's collected in a historical context, the data will be tainted with whatever particular biases we had in society at that time. It could also be that a particular data set that you use to train a system does not accurately represent the population that you want to capture. And I mean, we have seen several examples of, for example, this facial recognition system, which worked well for white men, but did not manage to correctly identify colored women, as one particular example, where it turned out that the kind of data set that was used to train the system was severely biased towards white men. So, of course, there are challenges, but we can measure the kind of quality of these data sets. We can improve the data sets over time. And I mean, we do have them, so we can do introspection. We can actually see what is the data. So I mean, I really think this is, this is a challenge that can be overcome. It's not solved. It's not easy, but there are a lot of progress there. Another type of bias, which I think is much more hard, is when kind of just observing the reality or the world around us, collecting this data, is not sufficient because the world itself is biased. And for example, taking this example of salary statistics, I mean, we can collect statistics about the salary of people, and we will find that women in general have lower pay than men for similar types of jobs. So I mean, there is a kind of discrimination in society which means that if we cannot just collect the data, but we actually have to actively, not manipulate, but adapt the data to modify the data in order to actively reduce this bias. And of course, then it becomes very crucial questions like who determines what is the desired kind of desired statistics and so on. So I mean, this is of course, as I said, a very, very active area. And I mean, Sandra Vakhtri just came out with a very nice paper where she basically gave an overview of a number of this kind of bias related metrics and different methods to improve the quality of data and to reduce the bias and also to connect it to the legal perspective, which of course is very important. So I mean, there are many interesting challenges, but I do think it's it's possible to overcome. And I will also argue that it doesn't really matter if it's humans or machines that does this. It's more in the data and in our society in general. Another challenge is how do we evaluate these systems, or how do we determine whether the recommendation of such a system is correct or incorrect, or if it's appropriate. And here, I mean, I think it's quite interesting to look at this example of Go, So, I mean, there were a number of years ago, there were these Go games between Google DeepMind's AlphaGo and KG in this particular case. And in these games, there were human expert commentators commentating the games. And at several positions in the game, the humans basically said, haha, the computer made a mistake. A human would never play like that. And basically, the human experts were evaluating the quality of the moves based on our historical experience of how do we normally play this game. And of course, you can all figure out that the computer won the game. So objectively looking, it was a good move. But we as humans thought it was a bad move. And here I think we have an interesting challenge, how to actually evaluate. And I mean, in the extension also, how do we maintain this meaningful human control? So very interesting challenges here. And finally, I want to go back to this. I mean, in some sense, the analysis of human decision making. So I already kind of alluded to this several times, but I actually think that AI provides an excellent opportunity to study human decision making and to improve human decision making. However, I think this will be quite challenging for us as humans to accept these outcomes, because I do believe that our perception of the quality of human decision making is probably much higher than what it is in reality. So we're overestimating the quality of human decision making. And my case in point here is the French legal system, which made basically all the judgments available in a digital form a number of years back. And of course, people start to study this data. And one particular study was studying how judges was making decisions in immigration cases or immigration cases, and came to the conclusion that it didn't really matter that much what the kind of arguments were. It did matter much more who the judge were. So basically, different judges made different decisions on similar types of cases. And I mean, in my opinion, this is not particularly surprising. But of course, this did not go well in the French legal system. So, but then, of course, I mean, my reaction would be, that was not what we wanted. That was not what we would like it to be. How can we improve it? How can we fix this issue? But rather, what they said instead was that, no, you're not allowed to study how judges make decisions. So now you can go to prison for 5 years if you analyze how French judges do their decisions, which in my opinion is kind of the complete wrong, or I mean, opposite reaction to what we should be doing. That how can we improve the human decision making? So here I think we will see a lot of these cases, both where, I mean, where we actually find out that the human decision making systems weren't as good as we had hoped and expected them to be. And also this kind of human reaction that we don't want this. So to kind of conclude this part of the talk, I really think what we should focus on here is that it's not a question about either AI or humans, but it's really a question about AI and humans together. And I mean, the example I've been using for many years is this with chess, where we as humans don't have a chance against the chess playing computer, and we haven't had a chance for many, many years. But if you combine humans and chess playing computers, then they're better than both the best humans and the best chess playing computers. And I really think this is the key here, that it's about how can we develop tools which allows us as humans to do a better job than we've done before. Actually, you can see the same thing if you look, for example, in a medical case where human doctors and this automated decision-making system, they make different types of mistakes. So if you combine them, you get a better outcome than either by themselves. I should point out that there are two very important parts here. First of all is that it's a different skill to play chess with a computer compared to playing chess without a computer. So we really need to learn how to solve problems together with these machines. And secondly, we also need to adapt the way we work so that they are aligned with the way that these systems work. So we really need to work very hard on professional development and competence development, but also on how can we update and improve the ways of working in order to take advantage of these systems. So in some sense, one could summarize this. So, I mean, I mentioned out the challenges, the opportunities, and now in some sense, I want to focus on this trustworthy part. So that, I mean, the European Union has taken a very clear stance that yes, we believe that AI is something good. It can provide value to society. However, we don't want any AI, but we want this AI, which is what we call human-centric, meaning that AI is not not an end in itself, but a means, a way to reach a better society. And secondly, that it should be trustworthy, meaning that we should be able to feel confident that the quality and outcome of these systems is what we want them to be. I have been part of this high-level expert group on AI, where we have defined these ethical guidelines for trustworthy AI. And we have then defined trustworthy AI as it should be lawful. That means you should follow the rules and regulations. It should satisfy a number of ethical principles. It should also have a robust and safe implementation, so good intentions are not enough. And then we also went all the way from principles to requirements to assessment. Because, of course, it's very easy to state these general principles, but it's hard to realize in reality. And I think we did some interesting work there. So the four ethical principles that we defined were respect for human autonomy, prevention of harm, fairness, and explicability. So it's really, as you can see, it's based on the fundamental human rights. And it's really about how can we make sure that these systems empower and improve the situations of both individuals and society at large. And that we can understand and feel confident about the outcome of these systems. So I really think this was quite nice work. And then we also defined this assessment list for trustworthy AI. So I said we have these 7 requirements, which corresponds quite straightforwardly to the principles. But then we also had this assessment list where you have concrete questions that you can ask yourself ask yourself about your system that you're developing or that you're deploying in order to convince yourself that you're actually developing a trustworthy system. So I really think this is a very concrete and useful tool that you can use in order to improve the quality of your systems. So one thing that I'm also working on is on the European scale, I'm leading a European network called Taylor, where we have 54 leading AI research centers working on developing the scientific foundations for trustworthy AI. So I mentioned about trustworthy AI, but of course one major challenge is how do we actually achieve this? And we are working very hard to develop the scientific foundations. And we strongly believe that in order to do this, we need to combine techniques coming from learning, optimization, and reasoning, that neither of these areas by themselves will be sufficient, but that we really need to combine them in order to provide the technical foundations to deliver trustworthy AI. So this is a very interesting ongoing work that we in Sweden have a major because I think one thing that's really important is the fact that you need to work in these ecosystems, that you as an individual actor will not be able to solve all the challenges, but that you need to collaborate with others. And together you will be able to address many of these challenges. I think you need to change the way you work in order to allow this. And in Sweden, we actually have a very good ecosystem. Here mostly from an academic and innovation perspective, but I really think we cover a lot of things, and there are a lot of good organizations to help you, like AI Sweden, that was previously known as AI Innovation Sweden, accelerating the use of AI competence, providing professional development in the area of AI, and AI sustainability, providing concrete tools to support organizations to use AI in a responsible way, in a long-term and ethically sustainable manner. And of course, Linköping University is a major player in all of these initiatives. We also have the AI agenda, which is basically a grassroots activity in Sweden where all actors that are interested come together and define what are the things that we need to solve in order to use AI in a good way in Sweden, and how to improve the use of AI in Sweden and improve basically improving the welfare and improving the competitiveness of Sweden in general. I also mentioned this AI Sustainability Center, which I have been part of establishing since 2018. I think we started as one of this Vinnova-funded challenge-driven innovation. And we really started from the point that we want these AI systems to help empower society, combining the best of technology with the best of humanity. So it's really about this human and technology together. And what we have been working with is a number of tools to scan organizations, identify potential risks and pitfalls, and then define how can we mitigate them, how can we reduce the risks of these different pitfalls, and how can we concretely work to improve, in some sense, maximize the benefit while we minimize the risks. So we have developed this framework and have been applying it to a number of concrete cases in many different companies and organizations. In the fall, we were also invited to the Swedish Parliament. So we had a delegation coming from all aspects of academia, industry, and public sector. And what we really argued for was for large-scale, long-term initiatives for a national strategic AI program. So basically, we argued that we need 40 billion Swedish kroners over 10 years, and that industry is willing to put in 20 billion of those. And of course, we need the support from the public sector for the other 20 billion. And I really think we have a great opportunity working together towards this, because it's really important that we act now. So basically, the costs are increasing overall. So if we take the cost, so actually we will never have more funding than we have today, and we'll never have more resources than we currently have. So it's now that we have the opportunity to invest and make the investment in order to make it possible to really leverage these techniques before we have to reduce the quality of so we can really improve the quality of public sector, and that we can ensure that we have high quality in the work that we do, but also that we have a sustainable for the people working in the public sector. So the takeaway message for me is that AI, well, I haven't really talked about what the AI is, but it's about understanding intelligence and developing systems that exhibit intelligent behavior. It will affect all aspects of society, and trust will be absolutely essential. And therefore, we have been working with this what we call trustworthy AI systems. So here the EU has defined that it should be legal, ethical, and robust. And that we see that the public sector faces many of the challenges where AI can be part of the solution. So I said about this, improving the quality of decision making, improving the resource efficiency so that the employees can get more done without working harder. So we can get a less stressful and more supportive roles for the employees. And here my recommendation is really it's about education. We need to learn more. Both on an individual level, but also on the organizational level. We need people that combine this, have these dual competences, so they have both the professional competence and the technical competence, and together they can be able to solve this. And leadership and organization are key to success. So we need brave leaders who dare to take the first step. Because, I mean, in part, it is uncharted territory. Yes, there are risks, but I do think the opportunities and the potential value greatly outweighs the risks if we take the risk seriously and we take this active role in mitigating and minimizing the risks that occur. And I really think that the most important part to do this is that it's not about kind of completely automating everything and removing the people. It's really about empowering and supporting and augmenting people in order for us to do a better job. So it's really about humans and AI together solving the major challenges for the public sector and ensuring that we have the high quality public service that we want and that we think is a key hallmark of a successful society. Thank you very much.